The call for help. The silence of deep space was rarely broken, but when it was, it carried the weight of entire civilizations. The message came in the dead of night, a desperate transmission that cut through the calm like a blade. Lieutenant Commander Elias Kane had been dozing off in the dim glow of his console aboard the UEN Resolute when the high-priority distress signal flashed across his screen. His heart skipped a beat. He straightened, rubbing the fatigue from his eyes as he hit the playback. The holographic display flickered, and a blue-skinned, trembling Centaurian ambassador materialized before him. His elongated violet eyes were filled with something Elias had never seen from their species before: raw fear. "This is Ambassador Trell of Centauri Prime. We are under attack. The Void Empire has breached our outer defenses. They are slaughtering civilians. Cities are burning. We do not have the strength to hold them off. We beg you, Earth. Anyone, please help us." The transmission cut off, replaced by eerie static. Elias' throat went dry. The Centaurians, one of the most peaceful and enlightened species in the known galaxy, were being wiped out, and they were begging for help. He slammed his fist against the emergency alert panel. "Get me Admiral Carter. Now." The weight of the decision. Within 20 minutes, the United Earth Navy's highest-ranking officers were gathered in the war room aboard the UEN Resolute. The meeting was being transmitted to the UNSC Military Council on Earth, a high-stakes emergency discussion unfolding across the stars. Admiral Marcus Carter stood at the head of the holographic table, his expression unreadable as he replayed the message for the 5th time. "We have confirmation from our long-range scouts," he finally said, his voice like stone. "The Void Empire has launched a full-scale assault on Centauri Prime. Every major city is under siege. Their fleet outnumbers the Centaurian forces 5-1. If this continues, Centauri Prime will be wiped from existence in less than 72 hours. A tense silence followed. Elias looked around the room. These were the men and women responsible for Earth's security. Tactical geniuses, military strategists, diplomats, people who had spent their entire careers preparing for the inevitable day when war would come to humanity's doorstep. But today, it wasn't humanity under attack. It was their allies. "Have the other empires responded?" asked Commander Valerie Yuan, one of Earth's top military analysts. The silence that followed told Elias everything. Admiral Carter exhaled through his nose. "No." "What about the Arterians?" someone asked. Carter shook his head. "Neutral." "The Meridian Collective?" "Neutral." "The Drask Dominion?" "Neutral." The words hung in the air like poison. "They're all afraid," Elias muttered. "Not afraid," Carter corrected. "They're choosing survival." Yuan folded her arms. "And if we intervene? If Earth sends its forces to help, we become the first species in history to openly defy the Void Empire." Elias clenched his fists. "So, what? We let the Centaurians die?" "We could send humanitarian aid," suggested General Dawson. "Evacuate as many civilians as possible." "And then what?" Elias snapped. "Watch from a safe distance as the Void Empire wipes out an entire species. Because that's what will happen. Make no mistake. This isn't a war. This is genocide." The room fell silent again. Carter's gaze locked onto Elias. "You believe we should fight?" Elias didn't hesitate. "Yes." Another long pause. Then, Carter turned to the UNSC representative on Earth. "We need a decision." The Secretary General, an aging man with steel-gray hair, sighed heavily. "If we intervene, it's war. Not just for us, but for every human colony across the stars. Earth has never fought an interstellar war before. We may not survive it." Elias' voice was firm. "And if we do nothing, we might survive, but what does that make us?" A long silence. Then, one by one, the hands began to rise. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Admiral Carter straightened. "Then it's decided." He turned to Elias, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Commander Kane, effective immediately, you are being promoted to captain of the UEN Resolute. You will lead the first human fleet into battle." Elias swallowed hard. "Understood, sir." Carter's voice was low, heavy. "From this moment forward, humanity is at war with the Void Empire. The battle begins." The Resolute was the first of Earth's warships to depart. Within hours, dozens of vessels followed. Battleships, cruisers, carriers. It wasn't enough to match the Void Empire in numbers, but humans had never needed overwhelming numbers to win. They needed heart. As Elias stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past, he activated the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Captain Kane. I know what we're about to do isn't easy. We are stepping into a war that isn't ours, a fight we did not start. But the Centaurians have stood by us since the day we entered the galactic stage. They have treated us as equals, as allies, as friends." He let that sink in before continuing. "The other species of the galaxy have chosen to stand by and watch. But humanity, we stand up when no one else will. When others turn their backs, we rise. We fight, because that is who we are." The crew listened in silence. Then, one by one, the ship captains across the fleet began acknowledging the call. UEN Vanguard standing by. UEN Dauntless standing by. UEN Valhalla standing by. All ships, locked and loaded. The Resolute burst out of FTL first, dropping into orbit over Centauri Prime. The sight that met them sent a cold rage through Elias' veins. The planet was burning. Massive Void Empire dreadnoughts loomed over the surface, their weapons tearing through Centaurian defenses. Civilian ships attempted to flee, only to be shot down like insects. Cities lay in ruins, smoke and fire choking the atmosphere. Elias inhaled sharply. Then, through the main viewport, he saw it, an open communication line coming from the Centaurian command ship. A familiar blue-skinned ambassador appeared on the screen, his face streaked with soot and desperation. "You actually came," Ambassador Trell whispered. His voice was hoarse, disbelieving. Elias nodded. "We stand with you." Trell's eyes glistened, but there was no time for gratitude. "The Void Empire has crushed our defenses," he said hurriedly. "We are barely holding our last line. If they break through, it's over." Elias' grip tightened on the armrest of his chair. "Then we don't let them break through." He turned to his weapons officer. "All ships, weapons free." The order was relayed in an instant. The first human volleys cut through the darkness of space, slamming into the enemy fleet with pinpoint precision. Fire bloomed across the black void as battleships clashed, explosions illuminating the burning planet below. The war for Centauri Prime had begun. And for the first time in history, humanity had made its choice. They would not stand by. They would fight. Humanity's first battle in the stars. The moment the first volley of human firepower streaked across the void, there was no turning back. On the bridge of the UEN Resolute, Captain Elias Kane stood motionless, his hands gripping the command console as the battlefield unfolded before him. The human fleet, though vastly outnumbered, moved like a pack of wolves, coordinated, relentless, and determined to tear through the enemy's ranks. "Enemy flagship targeting us, Captain," shouted Lieutenant Aria Voss, the ship's tactical officer. Her fingers flew across the controls. "They're locking weapons. All power to forward shields," Elias ordered. "Return fire. Concentrate on their bridge." The Resolute's main cannons roared to life, sending lances of high-energy plasma slamming into the massive Void Empire battleship ahead of them. The enemy vessel's shielding flickered, then partially collapsed under the relentless assault. On screen, Elias could see the UEN Dauntless, one of their heavy cruisers, weaving through enemy fire like a predator in the dark. Its railguns unleashed devastating rounds that ripped through a smaller Void Empire corvette, sending debris scattering across space. "Captain," Aria continued, eyes wide. They're adapting to our attack patterns. Their shield frequencies are shifting. Of course they were. The Void Empire wasn't a mindless conqueror. It was a calculated force. Elias glanced at Commander Valerie Yuan, his second in command. Thoughts? She narrowed her eyes at the tactical readout. They're countering our offensive strategy too fast. It's like they've fought us before. That was impossible. Humanity had never fought an interstellar war. Unless we're not the first humans they faced, Elias murmured. The thought sent a cold shiver down his spine, but there was no time to dwell on it. Adjust all weapon modulations, he commanded. Switch firing patterns to randomized intervals. Make it harder for them to predict our strikes. The crew jumped into action. The ship's AI instantly recalibrated targeting systems, ensuring that each volley of plasma fire varied in timing and impact points. The effect was immediate. Enemy ships began taking unexpected damage, their shields struggling to adjust. But the Void Empire was not an enemy easily shaken. Multiple inbound fighters, called Ensign Darius Cole from the sensor station. They're deploying boarding craft. Targets locked on Resolute and Vanguard. Elias' jaw tightened. Launch all interceptors. Do not let them reach us. The UEN Resolute trembled as the first wave of enemy missiles streaked toward them. The ship's automated defense turrets blasted several out of the sky, but one slipped through, detonating against the hull in a fiery explosion. Minor hull damage, reported the engineering officer, but they're testing us. Then let's show them what happens when you test humanity, Elias growled. The UEN fleet surged forward, weaving between enemy warships with a precision that defied their limited experience in space combat. But the Void Empire had the advantage of numbers and superior technology. Captain, Yuan said, stepping up beside him. If we stay like this, they'll pick us off one by one. We need an edge. She was right. The humans had already lost 3 corvettes in the opening minutes of battle. They needed something the Void Empire wouldn't expect. Elias turned to Aria. What do we know about their command ship? She pulled up the schematics from the intelligence briefing. It's larger than anything we've seen before. 3 times the size of the Resolute, shielded at all critical points. But she hesitated. But what? There's an energy signature deep within its core, something different from its primary reactor. I don't think it's standard technology. Elias studied the readings. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. Commander Yuan, prepare the strike teams, he ordered. We're boarding that ship. The gamble of war. Inside the UEN Resolute's hangar bay, dozens of soldiers suited up in their advanced combat armor, checking their weapons and finalizing tactical plans. These weren't ordinary troops. These were the best Earth had to offer. The elite orbital strike corps, trained for deep space combat and planetary insertions. Elias stood before them, his own armor locking into place, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. We don't know what's inside that ship, he said, scanning the faces of his soldiers. But we know one thing. If we take out whatever is powering it, we turn the tide of this battle. And if we fail, we die fighting like humans should. Standing, not kneeling. A cheer erupted from the strike team. They were ready. The hangar doors opened, revealing the endless abyss of space. The dropships fired their thrusters, launching from the Resolute like arrows loosed from a bow, streaking toward the enemy command vessel. As they neared, enemy fighters swarmed in like locusts. Human escort fighters engaged them immediately, explosions flashing in the distance. But Elias had no time to watch. The dropship shook violently as it neared the enemy vessel's hull. Brace for impact, the pilot shouted. The moment they touched down, magnetic clamps secured them to the exterior. Charges detonated at the entry points, and the boarding team surged into the ship's dark corridors. Inside the enemy's fortress, the air inside was thick, artificial, laced with a scent that sent alarms through Elias' mind. Something unnatural. Stay close, he ordered. The team advanced through the dimly lit halls. The architecture was alien. Twisting corridors of black metal, pulsing lines of energy running along the walls like veins. And then they saw them. Not machines, not simple drones. The crew of the Void Empire's warship. They weren't aliens. They were human. Or at least, they had been once. Their bodies were twisted, augmented beyond recognition. Their skin was fused with synthetic plating, their eyes replaced with glowing lenses. They moved in eerie synchronization, as if controlled by a single mind. Elias felt his stomach turn. "My God, what did they do to them?" whispered Sergeant Cole. The creatures turned in unison, their voices a distorted echo as they spoke. "You were warned." Then they attacked. Gunfire erupted in the narrow corridor as the creatures lunged, moving faster than any human should. The strike team opened fire, plasma rounds slamming into the cybernetic horrors. But they barely faltered. Elias ducked as one swung at him, its arm transforming into a blade mid-motion. He rolled, bringing his rifle up and unloading a burst into its head. It collapsed, but others took its place. "Fall back," Yuan shouted. "We need to find that energy source. Now." They pushed forward, forcing their way through the onslaught. Then, at the heart of the ship, they found it. A massive chamber, glowing with an unnatural light. Suspended at the center was a device, pulsing, humming, alive. And within it, frozen in time, was something Elias could barely comprehend. A human. Not augmented, not corrupted. A human from another time. Eyes closed, suspended. And then, slowly, those eyes opened. Elias' breath caught in his throat, because he recognized them. And if this was who he thought it was, then history had lied to them all. The lost legend awakens. The chamber pulsed with an eerie blue light, casting shifting shadows across the walls. Captain Elias Kane stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight before him. Suspended in the glowing stasis field was a human, untouched by the mechanical corruption that plagued the other crew members of the Void Empire's warship. But it wasn't just any human. This man had the presence of something ancient, something forgotten. His body was preserved in perfect condition, clad in a sleek, unfamiliar exosuit unlike anything Elias had ever seen. His features were sharp, chiseled, with a battle-hardened expression that remained even in deep sleep. And then his eyes opened. A pulse shot through the chamber as the energy field flickered and collapsed. The man's body tensed, his muscles coiling like a predator waking from hibernation. His feet touched the floor with unnatural grace. And for a moment, there was only silence. Elias raised his rifle instinctively. His team did the same. The figure's glowing blue eyes locked onto him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, in a deep, commanding voice, the man said two words that sent a chill through Elias' spine. "Who rules the stars?" The question was so sudden, so deliberate that Elias hesitated. He wasn't sure what answer the man was expecting. The stranger took a slow step forward. His movements were measured, controlled, like a warrior sizing up an opponent before striking. "Who rules the stars?" he repeated, his voice carrying a weight that demanded an answer. Elias exhaled, his grip tightening around his weapon. "The Void Empire." A slow, almost unreadable smirk crossed the man's lips. "Then we failed." Before Elias could respond, the chamber trembled as alarms blared throughout the ship. A deep, distorted voice echoed through the speakers, one of the augmented monstrosities they had encountered earlier. "Containment breach. The last soldier has awakened. Purge the intruders." The walls groaned as hidden doors hissed open, releasing wave after wave of the cybernetic horrors. Twisted remnants of humanity, their bodies fused with metallic implants, surged into the chamber with terrifying speed. "Contact," shouted Commander Valerie Yuan, raising her rifle. Elias didn't hesitate. "Hold the line." Gunfire erupted as the team engaged, plasma rounds ripping through the first wave of attackers. But they kept coming. The creatures moved like a hive mind, synchronized, relentless. Every time one fell, another took its place. Elias braced for the worst, until a blur of motion passed him. The awakened soldier moved like a force of nature. In an instant, he was among the enemy, his body twisting and weaving through the cybernetic monstrosities with an elegance that defied physics. Then he struck. His fists shattered steel, his blows tearing through augmented armor as if it were nothing. He fought with a fluid, almost mechanical precision, his exosuit pulsing with energy as he moved faster than the eye could follow. One of the creatures lunged at him with a blade-like arm. He caught it mid-swing, twisted, and tore it from its socket in one brutal motion. The creature collapsed, sparking, but he was already moving to the next. Elias had seen many warriors in his life, but this was something else. The man fought with the precision of a machine and the raw fury of a soldier who had nothing left to lose. "Who the hell is this guy?" Ariavos muttered, gunning down another enemy. Elias didn't know, but he knew one thing. This man was the reason the Void Empire had feared waking whatever was on this ship. The tide of battle shifted in their favor, one by one. The cybernetic horrors fell, until at last, the chamber was silent. The flickering lights above cast eerie shadows over the fallen bodies, smoke and electricity crackling in the aftermath. "Yeah." Elias nodded, though he wasn't sure how to explain humanity's current position in the galaxy. "But who are you?" The soldier hesitated for a moment, then straightened. "I was once known as Commander Dane Vallis, 2nd Legion of the Terran Vanguard." Elias blinked. "Terran Vanguard." Dane nodded. "The last line of defense against the Apex War." The room fell silent. Elias' mind reeled. The Apex War was nothing more than a vague legend, whispered in the few surviving records of ancient spacefaring civilizations. A war that predated Earth's recorded history. A war that, according to those records, ended with humanity's complete annihilation. But this man, this living, breathing soldier, was proof that wasn't true. "You fought the Apex?" Elias asked carefully. Dane's expression darkened. "We didn't fight them. We erased them." The weight of those words sent a chill through the room. Valerie Yuan whispered, "But how? How did you survive?" Dane exhaled. "We didn't. We were sealed away, along with the last weapons of humanity's greatest war." His gaze flickered toward the walls of the ship, almost as if he were remembering something. "I was supposed to sleep forever. Until now." Elias clenched his jaw. "The Void Empire, they found you." Dane nodded. "They didn't just find us. They used us. They took our bodies, our technology, and twisted it. The soldiers you fought, they were once my comrades." The realization hit like a sledgehammer. The Void Empire hadn't just conquered lost civilizations. They had stolen them, assimilated them, and now they were trying to do the same to humanity. Elias took a slow breath. "Then we have a common enemy." Dane studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes." The ship trembled again as another explosion rocked the hull. Aria checked her scanner. "Captain, more enemy forces inbound. Whatever's left of this fleet is scrambling to contain us." Elias turned to Dane. "Can you fight?" Dane smirked. "Can you breathe?" "Good," Elias said, gripping his rifle. "Then let's get off this ship." Dane stepped forward, his voice cold and determined. "No." Elias hesitated. "No." Dane's glowing blue eyes burned with something fierce. "We don't escape," he said. "We end this ship here and now." The statement sent a ripple of tension through the group. Aria frowned. "Destroy it? We don't have the firepower for that." Dane's smirk returned. "You don't, but I do." He turned toward the core chamber, where a vast energy network pulsed like a heart. "This ship runs on stolen technology. My technology. If I can overload the main reactor, we can cripple the entire fleet." Elias considered the plan. It was risky. It was reckless. But it was their best shot. "All right," he said. "Then let's blow this thing to hell." Dane stepped toward the reactor, placing his hands against the energy field. The moment he touched it, the ship screamed. Alarms blared as systems began shutting down. The voices of the Void Empire's synthetic soldiers crackled through the comms, distorted and panicked. "He is awake. Shut it down. Shut it down." But it was too late. Dane turned to Elias, his smirk widening. "You might want to run." And then, the ship began to explode.